Prince Charles talking about how the threat to humanity. Forget about the threat to the planet. The threat to humanity is existential, and the definition of an existential threat is that it's going to destroy you. You're going to die. That's what existential threats are. So if climate change and the oil industry, let's use that, point finger at the oil industry, and the gas industry and these pipelines, if these are all part and parcel of the cause of climate change, and if climate change is indeed an existential threat, then the point that David Suzuki here is making is actually valid. What do you expect them to do? Okay, I mean, they're literally threatening your life. Now, I don't agree with any of those assessments, by the way, but I think that it behooves us to pay close attention to this particular point, because I do think that you could very well start to see more violence. Go ahead,
Joseph,
Robert.
I got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
There's a certain radical leftist group with the name Rebellion in it. I don't know the full name. Do you guys know what the full name? It's something Rebellion.
Extinction Rebellion.
Extinction Rebellion. And this is what they believe in.
What they said they were going to put David Suzuki's word to action.
Oh, wow.
Oh, well.
Exactly.
Okay, now hang on a second. It's one thing. Look, if under certain circumstances, and believe me, if anybody who knows me knows that I do not, under any circumstances, support David Suzuki or his worldview. But under the right circumstances, anybody's words can be taken out of context. My point is that I think he was using that tactic to try to avoid blame, because, what do you expect to happen? I don't think for a second that he actually he believes that his words will not be digested in that way. I'm not letting him off the hook, in other words, because I think the guy is playing a very dangerous game.
Okay.
Because the climate change is not an existential threat. People's reaction to it may be, but it's being fanned by the likes of David Suzuki.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
I don't disagree with that. I think that's fair.
Yeah, but I think the point is that someone will take it that far when he sort of says it as if it's acceptable. I mean, sure, he says, "Oh no, I don't support that," but he brought it up. He makes it acceptable just by that.
But I think it's a mistake for us to focus too much attention on what David Suzuki as the individual said or didn't say in this case. Because even without David Suzuki, I believe that this is a very real danger. Mm-hmm. Is the more you get these public figures talking about how this is a threat, an existential threat to humanity, that if we don't control this, and not by 2050 or 2070 in the case of India, but in the next
14 years.
Well, and we heard 14 years 4 years ago.
Uh-huh.
So by the year 2030, 2031, according to these people, climate change will be so severe that, people are going to be dying in the streets like flies. Okay? Mm-hmm. And so if you're a young person, okay, and you're growing up in this environment, what other conclusions are you going to draw? Mm-hmm. Nothing else matters. Okay?
Well,
nothing matters.
Here's what I think we do about it, though. Because I agree with you. You shouldn't ignore the threat that I would say, not the threat from the climate, but the threat of people fanning the fear about the climate. That's the real threat. And we need to start calling him on this stuff, paying attention to it. And when he comes out with outrageous stuff like this, crucify him publicly. Yeah, that's what we need to do, because that's the only way we're going to get him to shut up.
That's right, and I wish the Conservatives would do that. I mean, they came out and condemned Suzuki. They didn't say, but his arguments are bunk. They're ridiculous. I mean, if you look at Aaron O'Toole's statement, and he said, all the Conservatives condemned Suzuki. Well, bully for you, but you didn't undo the reason that he said that. I mean, if you're not going to address the reason why people are actually making these crazy conclusions, then their conclusions will stand.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly the point I'm making.
Can I make...
Okay.
Can I make one last point?
Roger,
for
Robert,
this
it's
for
your
Tom.
call. Even though we've dominated the conversation, it's your call.
Yeah, just one last thing for Tom Harris. Those blades, to come back to your wind turbines, I read everywhere that those blades, I don't know what kind of plastic composite they're made of, but they're not recyclable.
Yeah, you're right.
When they get rid of those blades, they have to bury the whole blade underground.
Mm-hmm. That's exactly true. And they don't last anywhere near as long as they say. 15 years, they're typically useless. I mean, they got to take
20. They say 20.
Yeah, but that's an optimistic estimate. The fact is, as I said earlier in the show, the forces on those blades is huge, and they do not recycle them. You're right; they just bury them. So it's just like you said. I'm glad you brought up the movie, the Michael Mann movie, Planet of the Humans.
Michael Moore, right?
Yeah,
Michael Moore, Planet of the Humans.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
He's an ultra leftist.
That's
but
right.
He went completely to the right with that one.
Well, he went to the reality, and of course, he was savaged by people on the left. They hated his guts because he was one of them, and he actually told the truth. He told the truth.
Yeah,
which is really
But the problem today is all the kids are already brainwashed, and that's a big problem.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, and we've gotten into this before.
Start calling him on it.
We've gotten into this before, Robert, and of course, kids today they lack so many areas of just basic knowledge that they don't know enough to be able to challenge these things and to recognize when, the wool is being pulled over their eyes. Mm-hmm. There's no one single problem here. It's the convergence of several things that you have a population that is undereducated and badly educated, even though they might spend more years in educational institutions than perhaps ever in the history of humanity. Okay, so they lack the basic skills and the basic knowledge. Then you have charlatans out there, and I'll even go so far as to say people who themselves in their work believe that these are problems because they themselves don't have, for whatever the skills or even the intellectual fortitude, if you will, to be able to question their own results. Mm-hmm. So they reach a conclusion, and then they just run with that conclusion, and it doesn't matter what you say. If you don't agree with them, they don't pause and say, well, maybe I'm wrong, let's go back to the drawing board. They basically attack you and say, well,
you're a denier.
You're a denier. So, listen, we have to go for a break.
I'd like. Okay, continue, Joseph.
No, it's you finish up, but we have to go for a break quickly here. So go ahead.
Okay, well, just one last thing. I want your opinion on it. They're saying right now that climate change is responsible for the flooding in BC. I don't know if you guys saw my email, but the 100 millimeter of rain they got in Abbotsford so far, the record is in 1919 with 101 millimeter. So when they're saying it's climate change now, what happened in 1919?
Oh yeah, well the same thing with all of these same thing with all these temperature records that they were breaking in the past summer, where we were able to go back and show 50 years ago and 75 years ago and 100 years ago that's the record they broke. So and you break a record by a fraction of a degree or by a fraction of a millimeter or 2 millimeters or whatever it is in rainfall.
Yeah,
and which is almost negligible, but you've shattered the record.
Yeah,
and some of these records are quite long-standing, so you have to ask yourself, well, if it's global warming, then why did we have these records before?
In Quebec, the record is 40 degrees Celsius. Okay? We saw that in 1931.
Oh,
we haven't broken it yet.
1931, right? That was during the Dust Bowl.
Yeah.
Well, you just hang on to your hat there, Robert.
We haven't broken the 40 yet.
That's okay. You'll do it soon, Robert. I have complete faith in you. Okay, we got to go, guys. We have to go. Thanks for calling, Robert. We appreciate the call. And we do have to go for a break now. So, ladies and gentlemen, stay tuned. We're heading into the home stretch here on the Nick and Joe Show on the Think Radio Broadcast Center. We'll be back in a few minutes. Back to the Nick and Joe Show. I'm Joe, he's Nick, and sitting across from me in the studio is our guest and good friend, Tom Harris, from the International Climate Science Coalition, and we are heading into the home stretch. It's been a pretty good show so far, very informative, a lot of passionate arguing back and forth, which is good, especially since we generally agree with one another on the issues that we're talking about tonight, but still, there are interesting points to debate, I think, on some of this stuff. Just a quick bit of housekeeping. If you are listening online and you want to participate in the chat room, just click on the chat bubble in the player, and you may have to register or log in, one or the other, or both if you've never registered before, and that is because we want to make sure that you're a flesh and blood human being. We do not sell any of your personal information. So just rest assured, if you're getting spam, unless it's directly from us, it's not our fault. And that's right. And if you want to call anywhere toll free from North America, 855-346-1020. But if you're driving and listening to us in the car radio, please use your car phone or pull over.
Yes.
Because we want you to be safe.
We condone both of those things.
Yes, we do. We support safe calling.
That's right.
There's a joke in there. I was going to say something that was funny, actually, but unless you're somebody else, but we're not going to. Okay, I'll shut up now because that's going to get us in trouble.
You're digging, Joseph. You're digging.
I'm digging a hole, and I need Tom to come in here and bail me out.
Oh, okay.
So, Tom, you need to remember Roy Rogers' advice: when you're stuck in a hole, quit digging.
So Tom we were just talking during the break about some of these records. So,
well, that's right. And I looked up the record. Now, how many people died so far in BC with the floods? I'm not sure. I don't know.
I heard the number was up to 5 or 6. 5 or 6.
Well, guess what? The deadliest flood in Canadian history was, drumroll, 67 years ago, 1954. Hurricane Hazel. It killed 75 people in Toronto.
Right.
67 years ago.
They still talk about it.
67 years ago. Now, you look up all the records. The best thing to do is to actually look up on the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration website. They have a database of all the extreme records for every state. Oh, that's right. For every state in the union, okay? Things like highest temperature, lowest temperature, most snowfall, most hail, highest winds, all kinds of things like that. And what you find is that in recent years, and this is probably the best database in the world of its kind, and it's covering pretty substantial area. These are full statewide records for the whole U.S., you find that there's virtually no records being set anymore. I mean, virtually all of the statewide weather records were set in the dirty 30s, in the 1930s. So, I mean, the whole concept that extreme weather is being made worse by climate change is simply wrong. It's also wrong theoretically because, weather is driven by the difference in pressure between latitudes, between regions. And the global warming models tell us that it would warm most in the Arctic and the Antarctic. I mean, it would warm most in high latitudes in both hemispheres. So the actual temperature difference, the delta, so to speak, across different latitudes from the high latitude to mid latitudes, the temperature difference would be less. So there's less force actually driving extreme weather. And that is indeed what is being shown in the records. Extreme weather records are being set less often. It seems like they're being set more often because, of course, more people have cell phones. A tornado that hit Oklahoma perhaps 100 years ago might not have been seen by anybody, but now it's witnessed and filmed by 1,000 people. So we're constantly told, oh, my God, look at this, it's increasing. But no, it's not increasing.